Welcome back to the Art of Actual Change. I'm your host, Derek Nielsen, former health specialist turned wildlife, conservation, fine art photographer. Through my many travels around the world, I've met some people who are doing some fascinating work outside themselves to make this planet a better place to live. Each episode, I'll be bringing you these people, letting them tell their stories, and hopefully you'll find inspiration in these stories so that you can go out and make an actual change in your world or the world around you. Welcome back, everybody, to the Art of Actual Change. I have an incredible guest today. His name's Alex Falconer, and he has done something that I think most of us would be either too afraid to try or just don't have the time to try, or chicken, I'm not sure. But Alex traversed the Boundary Waters recreation area in northern Minnesota. He did a 110-mile run, which that in itself to me seems incredible and insane. But the reason he did it was to raise awareness for what is happening in the Boundary Waters area and the threat that it was under. So Alex, welcome to the show. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Tell me a little bit about what you did up in the Boundary Waters and why you decided to do it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on. This is, I love talking about this. I decided to run through the Boundary Waters just because there's a completely unique take on how people typically experience the Boundary Waters. And I just wanted that unique twist for a couple of reasons. But I guess stepping back, I've just grown up in Minnesota, constantly going to up north to the Boundary Waters along the Lake Superior North Shore. It's just a place that just means so much to me. It's just a family legacy, essentially. Just always haven't been up there. And I've been getting more and more into trail running the past 5 years. So differentiated from, like road marathons, trail runs can run the gamut up to, 100 miles. There's now 200-mile races, et cetera. But I haven't gone that far yet. But just getting into the trail running world has really just kind of opened up my eyes as far as the trail running community is a really environmentally friendly and excited and activist community, just because we have to have 100 miles of land to traverse to pursue our crazy
Absolutely.
And so people, I think, and I think when you're crossing that much land on foot, you really gain this appreciation for the land that you're crossing, and in this case the need to preserve it. So I conceive of this project as a way to bring the trail running community into our campaign to save the Boundary Waters. Just the quick on that too, there's a mining threat to the Boundary Waters of sulfate or copper mining that could go in right along the southern border, and all the pollution that would flow from this mine would go straight through the heart of the wilderness, and would be a disaster for not only the ecology and the animals and the plants and just the wildlife in general, but the local community and the economy that they have built up. I mean, this is a world-class recreation area with an economy built up around it. So our campaign talks to paddlers and Boundary Waters users and clean waters advocates, and this was my way to bring kind of my own personal passion into the campaign and try to tap into a new audience of trail runners. And so it's just taking something that I love in trail running and the place that I love, the Boundary Waters, marrying the two of them and just going for it and making as big of a deal as we can. Bring in people that follow on social media, all the trail running hashtags or the blogs or the whatever is out there, podcasts. They've done a few and touching into a new audience and asking them to help us out.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm finding more and more that people, even like myself, what I'm doing with my photography is like, we find these passions like you with the trail running, and we want to make it, how can we impact something else? Like, how can we take it beyond ourselves and use the platform to do better and do something outside ourselves or save a conservation area like you did? What sort of training went into running that sort of distance? I mean, I know you've been doing it for a while, but like, is there anything in particular that you had to do to put into it?
This was really a 3-year project to run the full thing, the Boundary Waters Traverse. I started trail running, just building up my miles and building up my experience on trails. It's quite a bit different from road running. where typically that's flat. Trail running is not flat,
Yeah.
especially in the boundary waters. Boundary waters traverse had 18,000 feet of elevation gain throughout the run, which if you think of Minnesota, like what mountain are you running up? Well, it's a like a knocked over mountain. You're just going up and down, essentially from base camp to the summit of Everest in elevation gain. So there's a lot there. So you got to get used to that. There's a lot of trail runs in the Superior National Forest that I've been doing for the past 5 years. The Superior Trail Run. There's a spring version and a fall version, which is the 100-mile. And it's really important to me that I get in that sort of training and distance, because when you're running through the wilderness, when you have 40 miles of pure wilderness on either side of you, you can't just quit and be done. You gotta go.
Yeah, so, you're stuck out there.
I definitely need the experience. So I ran a lot of 50Ks, 50 miles. I ran the Superior 100. So along the Superior National Forest, very similar terrain, 100-mile run. A lot of that for prep. And then I also started just running on trails in the boundary waters themselves. So there's the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness is, it's canoe country for a reason. There's 1,100 lakes. And the way people typically traverse it is via canoe, and then they get to the edge of the lake, they find their portage, they carry everything across on their shoulders or on their back and float off and keep going until they find their campsite that they want to stay at. But there are a lot of trails that are traditionally backpacking, hiking trails. And so I made it the goal that I wanted to run every trail within the boundary waters of 20 miles or longer before I ran this, including the 2 trails I linked together to create the traverse. And so did that and just really learned a lot as far as what the area is like. I mean, it's wilderness, so they can't maintain like bridges or really go in and clear out trails very well, because you can't have a motor in the wilderness, which means no chainsaw. So if there's a big blowdown, it takes a while for those to get cleared out, because the trees have to be cut by crosscut saws by hand. And so there's a lot of hopping over fallen trees, ducking under fallen trees, navigating around a blocked trail. So the learning aspect of running all these trails really gave me the foundation that I needed, not just the stress and the recovery put on your legs from overcoming all that, but just the knowledge of the trails themselves. And then the 2 that I linked up, the Border Route Trail, which, as the name signifies, runs pretty much along the US-Canadian border for 65 miles, and then meets a road that serves as an entry point to the wilderness all around it, and then takes off again on the Kekakavik Trail, just a quarter-mile south of it. So the 2 trailheads are very close, and that goes for another 40 or so miles, close to Ely, Minnesota. So ran both of those trails a couple times just to really, really get to know it. I started out one time running at night to run overnight and then finish up in the day. Another time ran in the day to finish up at night, just to get that running at night experience through the wilderness.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. And then you're crossing beaver dams for bridges. Sometimes you just have to walk across a stream or hop on rocks. I mean, so there's just all that, just really learning the knowledge and just getting a solid base of both physical and the knowledge of what the trail is like under my belt.
Any injuries along the way?
The only injury I had was the first time I tried to run the Border Route Trail. I broke a toe. I think right about mile 17, I hit a rock, stopped for a bit, and the throbbing kind of went down. I was like, all right, I can just continue. And then by the time I got out to the next road, which was about 40 miles later, I was done. There's several steep palisades, like these cliffs that you have to kind of do switchbacks going up. And that, when you're digging your toe in, just really aggravated it. Then my other leg was overcompensating. So I totally wore out my right leg. My left leg was inoperable. And so that was the only thing. It was also a 92-degree day and very humid. And so it couldn't cool down. So there was some
not a good day.
heat exhaustion, some GI issues, broken toe, like it was bad. So that one I bowed out at mile 56. I didn't go the last 9 or so miles, which it sounds kind of pathetic, but I was done.
No, I mean, it sounds pretty insane that you ran that extra distance with a broken toe. I mean, most people would just like lay there and cry themselves, what was me? All right. So that's like the physical training side of thing. What went into like the organizational side of thing? Like, I mean, it's when I was reading the article about you had some people helping you along the way. You you don't just go and do something like this and then expect the press to pick up on it. There must have been something you did ahead of time to bring the awareness, get people involved, and then like create a buzz around it and do it. So what went into the organizational side of things?
Yeah. So aside from working on the campaign, I came up in this world as a community organizer, electoral organizer, and so the whole bringing pieces together to outreach to people based off of either an election or an issue that I care about is very much part of just how I operate. So right, there's a lot that went into it ahead of time. Just maintained a blog about all of my runs, just heavy on social media. Our campaign would amplify. I'd ask other trail runners that I met along the way to help as well. And then the biggest boon was, so Patagonia, the clothing company, has been a big supporter of our campaign from the very beginning. And they have a trail running division. And I actually met with Claire Gallagher, who's one of their elite trail runners. And she's really kind of the environmental face of trail running activism in the world. And so I met her at a conference in Denver and just kind of went up to her and was like, hey, I've got this crazy idea. What do you think? And she's like, yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
So she helped get the Patagonia Trail Running Division on board. And so they were helping amplify it, did a blog for them. They pushed out several posts. And that was all just feeding into the whole thing of like, here's an entirely new audience. You've got all these people that follow the Patagonia Trail Running Instagram and Facebook, whatever that they would put out, and then it would link back to a petition or some other call to action, and then they get involved with the campaign. They really start learning about it. So all those aspects of it, doing some media interviews, just really brought the issue out, so that when it was time for the big run, people were kind of following along and primed, and hopefully we're about to celebrate the finish of the project.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. How did the Conservation Alliance get involved? Because that's how you and I met. I'm a member of the Conservation Alliance, and they pointed me in your direction, said, hey, this is what we have going on. You definitely talked to Alex about the success of the Boundary Waters. How are you involved with them?
Yeah, the Conservation Alliance is another organization that's been supporting us again from the beginning. This year, they announced that they have two main priorities that they're working on. Three main, sorry: Bears Ears, Arctic, and the Boundary Waters. And so their organization takes environmentally minded companies, and each of those companies there's tiers, but a certain amount of dues that then the Conservation Alliance pulls together to give out as grants to nonprofits that are working on land or water conservation efforts, of which we have been a part. And so they have helped us quite a bit with working with business leaders, especially in amplifying their voice. We've done a number of letters that business CEOs have signed on to, have gone to Congress or to the White House or the various agencies that we need them to. As well as then, encouraging their businesses to help highlight our issues. So we're reaching, it's not just us, but it's Patagonia, who's another, obvious example, but that they would push out something to their following, or North Face or Keen, or just all these kind of outdoor recreation businesses that are aligned on environment and helping follow it up. And so they were a big help. After my run, I did a presentation for their annual breakfast. Typically, they do the outdoor retailer show where all these businesses come together in Denver, but it's COVID, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
This year, they did an online component to it, and so they featured my run as part of their program. So again, just another way to be reaching out, and they've been an incredible partner as well.
Yeah. So getting these big backers behind you is definitely a huge way to get the word out. I mean, most people are familiar with Patagonia clothing. I don't know if as many people know of the Conservation Alliance yet, but when you get these big names behind you, it really starts to get the message out there further. So, I mean, that's awesome. That's the way to do it for sure. What, during the run itself, what were some of the hardest parts, like that when you started, you're like, oh man, I'm in, like, there's no turning back. What were some of the hardest parts that you experienced in the run itself?
I seem to just have this niche for picking days that are super hot in northern Minnesota when it shouldn't be. So this run was in May. The first one where I broke my toe and had heat exhaustion was in June, just after the summer solstice. My thinking was I just want to have as much daylight as I could.
Yeah.
Turned out that that was a super hot day. So this run, I was like, all right, we'll back it up to May, and they won't freeze at night, but it shouldn't be too hot. Well, it got hot again. So, but I was more prepared. I've had several more years of experience of running, and so I was better off. I had better nutrition. Was watching my water intake a lot more closely, so I was able to get through the heat better this time. But then, it's typical northern Minnesota. You just don't know what the weather is going to be. So it's upper 80s, low 90s during the day, and then suddenly the night starts to come, and the weather just dropped. It was like a mountain west storm where it's just sunny, and then suddenly it gets cloudy and just pours on you.
Wow.
And so right before dark, the sky just opened up, just pouring on us, lightning, and
Is this day one?
yeah, and it got cold. Yeah, so we ran all day. And then at night, then it just rained on us for 2 hours of this downpour. And then after that, I mean, it was cold. It was like 40 degrees. We just had to keep going because hypothermia was an obvious risk. But also just the foliage that just kept dripping on us. It just felt like it was raining the entire time. So that was definitely the low spot of just getting through that cold at dark when you're just miserable and you can't
Yeah.
see.
Are you running with a headlamp? Is that
Yep.
guiding your light through the darkness?
Yeah, and then part of it too, like Claire Gallagher came and ran. She ran that overnight stretch with me, both the hot day into the night. So she ran with me, and then Kyle Pietari, another elite trail runner, ran the second section of it, the Kekakabic Trail. And so just going back to kind of like how you're amplifying this, over time got connected with these amazing trail runners with their own following, but then are also world-class athletes, and just lending kind of credence to the project. But so they were there a part of it. There's several others, some friends, the mayor of Grand Marais, the nearby town to the Boundary Waters on the eastern side of it, ran with me for a bit too. So just a way to just keep those, using luminaries to my advantage and having their following, learn about it as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where did you stay during the night? Did you have camps that you had pre-arranged out in the wilderness, or was you carrying your own stuff on your back to add weight, or how did that work out?
No staying. We ran through the night. It was
Just
the full run was 38 hours nonstop. I took a 5-minute nap at one point, but that was it.
wow.
Just because my eyes were just shutting
Yeah.
and I couldn't stop them. But so a typical trail run that's organized, you'd have an aid station where people can give you food and water and change out socks if you need, whatever.
Sure.
Every typically like 10 miles or so. Can't do that. There's no roads. So people actually, some coworkers on the campaign, some friends, family set up aid stations where they actually canoed in. They paddled in, stayed overnight to meet us on the trail at various spots. And so there's 3 paddle and aid stations, and then also one at that road that bisects the border route and the Kekakabic Trail. And so some really dedicated coworkers and friends that were out to support. So we'd get there and then have some food, just rest a little bit, and then continue on.
Man, that's incredible. So tell me a little bit about what is inside the Boundary Waters Protection Act. What did you guys accomplish into going forward protecting that landscape? I know it was a Chilean firm, correct, that was looking to create this mine. What is inside the act itself that helps prevent it from turning into a mining wasteland?
Yeah. So to frame this up, there's two. It's what we're trying to achieve is a mineral withdrawal, which means that the government can take away the mining rights within a certain landscape based off of public interest, unique landscape, protecting wild spaces. So, for example, the exact same thing is undergoing with the Grand Canyon with uranium mining. This just outside of Yellowstone was a gold mine that would pollute the Yellowstone River and go through. That had a withdrawal applied to it, where they removed the ability for the government to hand mining leases out to companies, and that's just a way of protecting a landscape from a single known extractive industry pollution source. So that's what we're trying to do on this campaign. There's 2 types. There's an administrative withdrawal that the presidential administration can do. They can only do that by statute for up to 20 years.
Okay.
And then Congress can withdraw minerals and make that permanent. And so right now we're working with and through the Biden administration on that 20-year withdrawal process to get that in place. And that really just allows the time and space for both an environmental study to be done on what sort of mining would do to the wilderness. And it can take into account everything of water quality, air pollution, light pollution, the economics, public health, like all those things that go into what could happen when you institute a mining district where there currently isn't one. So it takes a look at all of that and then creates kind of this document of, okay, this is the potential risk. Should we allow this in this landscape? And then from that, then the administration can make a decision saying, look, the inherent risk here is just too much. We're gonna take this mining threat away. And that would be the administrative mineral withdrawal. Representative Betty McCollum from Minnesota has introduced the Boundary Waters Wilderness Protection and Pollution Prevention Act that would do the exact same thing, but make it permanent.
Okay.
And so it would withdraw those minerals from the watershed of the boundary waters from being able to be leased out to mining companies.
Okay. So where's that at in the process now? Is it the science and research side of things, or where are we at now?
So the Biden administration just kicked off it's a 2-year study. We're hoping it can be done before 2 years. The Obama administration had started it, then the Trump administration canceled it. And so the Biden administration is restarting it to complete it. So we have this foundational document to make science-based decisions on the fate of the boundary waters. So they've started that. What that begins with is a 90-day public comment period. So people can go to our website, www.savetheboundarywaters.org, and you can submit a comment. We have one pre-written, or you can edit it and make it kind of your own. Either way is great, and a good public participation for people to do. So they've started that, and then after the public comment period, then they study the issue. They take everything that people wrote in and apply that to what they should study and put that together. And then by 2 years is the longest amount of time it can take. Then they make the decision on to withdraw or not. So that's what the Biden administration has started. Representative McCollum's bill, again, the same thing, but just an act of Congress, has been introduced. We're getting close to 51 co-sponsors at this point. So that really just kind of helps amplify the fact that this is a federal public lands wilderness. It belongs to somebody in Florida, just as it does, me in Minnesota. And representatives from across the country have stepped up and actually signed their name onto the bill, saying this is a priority for me. I want this to be passed. And so we're working on the co-sponsorship list, having meetings every week, trying to get more people on. And it's been referred to the Natural Resources Committee, which will be the first stop where the bill will be heard, debated, and then ideally it gets passed out of committee, goes to the full membership of the House to vote to get passed or not.
Yeah. Wow. It's pretty incredible. So, I mean, the name of this podcast is The Art of Actual Change, and you guys are really making a big impact. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people want change to happen, but to make a physical or even an actual change in something takes a lot of effort. And congratulations to you guys to getting this initiative going. And it sounds like you guys are really making some progress on it to make an actual change in something, instead of just being like, hey, we'd like to do this, and then nothing happens. So, I mean, it's really impressive that you guys have been able to push it this far along to people who will listen and then vote on it to make it change. It's great. What are 2 or 3 things that you think you'd like to share about the Boundary Waters? Because it's obviously important. You grew up in that area. Maybe someone like myself from Chicago it's close enough where I can visit, but what are 2 or 3 things that you would love to share about it that maybe somebody from Florida or California or Texas or New York City that is important or beautiful about the Boundary Waters?
The Boundary Waters, to me, it's so incredible just in the fact it's 1.1 million acres of wilderness, and it's a lakeland wilderness. The way that's really important, I think, is that it makes it all the more accessible to people of all ages and physical abilities. I think a lot of people think of wilderness areas as the Mountain West or deserts, where you have to expend a lot of energy. You have to be really fit to hike up a mountain, or, be hiking on a trail through a desert and carrying gallons of water for yourself or your group, or have the foresight to stash some ahead of time. Um, the boundary waters is unique in the fact that you don't have to carry everything all the time. You can put in a canoe and float off and do the majority of your gear shuffling with water carrying the load.
Yeah.
So that's special. The water of the boundary waters is so clean and pristine that you can drink straight from the lake.
Man, I was reading about that. That sounds incredible. I mean,
you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to bring water with you. My mom's a doctor. She would be hesitant for me to say, "Hey, just drink from the lake." So
right. Yeah.
you should drink some sort of like a pen filter or a SteriPen, whatever. We typically don't. The only time that we filter our water is if our campsite is near a beaver dam, because then the giardia risk is there. But the water, it's so clean and pristine. This is the top of the watershed. All the water, no water actually flows into the wilderness that doesn't start there. It either comes as rain or snow melt, and it flows out from there. And so it's direct from the source, and you can literally just drink it without having to worry about it.
That's pretty impressive.
That's the other cool thing, I think. And then also, I mean, there's so much great things. The campsites are super remote. I mean, you can go for days without seeing another person. If you travel into the wilderness far enough. The dark skies, like last night was just an off the charts solar storm, and we had northern lights that just they all night they just went on, and you just can't get that quality of dark sky almost anywhere else. It's recognized as an international dark sky sanctuary. It's one of 14 in the world, so like the darkest skies in the world.
Wow.
So that, and there's just nothing like setting up your campsite, getting a fire going, cooking, eating over the fire, hanging out with friends or family, and just as the sun goes down, the loons on the lake start calling, and the ambience and the ethos of the boundary waters is so peaceful and calm and serene. You just can't find it anywhere. So I'd just recommend for everybody, like, come check it out. And it's relatively easy. There's outfitters that you can rent a canoe from, you can get gear from. If you have your own, all the more easy. And you can within the Midwest anyway, it's within a day's drive, you can have this world-class wilderness experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. So people like you and I are pretty familiar with being out in the bush and out in the wilderness. For people who may not be, is it safe? Are there risks involved with wild animals and things? Like, what should people, if they're coming from, a place where the scariest animal is like a horse, are there things that they need to be aware of when visiting?
I think safety is always the big concern. This summer, for example, there was a drought, which made it hard for bears. There's black bears in Minnesota to find berries that would be their normal kind of late spring, early summer food. And so they started realizing, hey, all these people are carrying in food for us. And so bears can get very accustomed to finding human sources of food, and then that becomes a problem both for people and the bear itself. So that's the only real concern there. Really, black bears they're more afraid of people than we are of them, and they'll catch, if they catch wind of you, typically they'll run away. It's just when they get hungry that they could become a problem. But there's a lot of tutorials on how to hang your food bag, find a tree, and have a rope and pulley system that's advised. So there's plenty of ways to mitigate that. The only other concern really is weather. You are out in the wilderness to the point where you just don't have any cell reception. So you just have to be smart and just really listen to what the weather is doing and feeling it. It's one of the cool things is you get out like 3 days without being able to check, the weather center app. You have no idea what's going on, but you can tell, you feel like, oh, the temperature is dropping. It's getting windy. The light has changed. There's clouds rolling in. You notice the natural environment around you to inform kind of like what's going on. So just being aware of weather, you don't want to paddle if there's lightning. Obviously, there's other things you can do if you're in the middle of a storm. If it's super windy, to orient your tent to open up the flaps so the wind goes through it instead of sweeping your tent away. So there's I think it's probably just nuisance black bears, mostly because people are idiots. That's the problem, and then weather challenges.
Yeah. There's a lot of that happening. I've been following a lot of what's going on in the Yellowstone National Park and the Tetons with people being idiots, and the bears, having their issues out there. So All right, people, check that out. Go up to the Boundary Waters and explore. I find it's like one of the most peaceful, almost spiritual experiences to be out in nature. Not necessarily religious, but a spiritual experience when you're out there and the only sounds you hear are the birds, the wind blowing through the trees, the water. It definitely makes an impact on people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's next for you after this? I mean, now that you've made this sort of achievement and it's steamrolling and snowballing downhill, what's next for you?
As far as running, I'm actually kind of enjoying not having to stay insanely fit and run way too much.
Yeah,
So that's been nice. I still get out obviously, and I've been
sure.
coaching my son's middle school cross country team, so that's been enjoyable. Just taking running instead of with a goal behind it, but just doing it because it's fun again is nice.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I'm trying to figure out. So we also have a video coming out about the run that's going to come out, and hoping to do some film screenings. I was also thinking about just kind of around the state doing meetups to go for a run in state parks and just talk about the issue and use that as kind of a call to action and a gathering. So it'll kind of live on in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going through Film Fest to reach new audiences. So the project is still plowing ahead, and once that gets released, there'll be a new set of people to talking to. And again, that whole organizing and just bringing it all back to the intent of this is what's next on the horizon anyway for this.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I was gonna say what are ways that people in general can get involved and help you out? Like, you can go to the website. What are ways that people can really support you in this effort?
Yeah, right now the biggest thing, and will be through January, is this public comment period where you can write in, just tell the government you want this place protected forever. So savetheboundarywaters.org is where that petition lives. There's also that, as well as then a note that you can send directly to your member of Congress asking them to support that bill from Representative McCollum. Other ways, just talking to people about it, following our social media, sharing or retweeting, those sort of things to just amplify within personal circles. Writing a letter to the editor. We have a tool on our website that can help you do that easily. So then you can get it, into your local paper, and more people just find out about it. I think it's just a lot of small actions that are relatively easy, that when enough people do it, it really piles on and can make a difference. I know it's hard for people to be like, I signed a move on petition, once a week. What does it actually do? But when you magnify that by hundreds of thousands of people taking a similar action or varied actions kind of within the theme, you actually do add up and start making a difference. And it helps quite a bit.
Yeah, it's so important. I find there's so many different environmental issues going on in the world today. I mean, we just had this big global climate summit, and there's just so many things to tackle. I feel that a lot of people get overwhelmed with it and feel like that they just can't, there's nothing they can do, or maybe they don't know where to start. So I definitely agree with you. It's something as simple as filling out a letter to your representative. Those little bits do go a long way. There's an organization, and I'm sure you're familiar with the NRDC, Natural Resource Defense Council. I get emails from them, and they've essentially pretty much laid out my entire message to the representative, and I just have to click and my name shows up and it goes off. And I find that brilliant. There's not a lot of effort that I have to put into it.
Yeah.
And it's sending the message that I read it and I support it and I send it off. And all those signatures, the representatives making the decisions to whether to allow the mining to happen or to remove it, they have to listen to their constituents. I mean, those were the ones who put them in place. And so every little letter does matter. Alex, where can they go to follow you and support you? Do you have your own personal handles that you use to spread the word?
Yep. Yeah. On Instagram and Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. Which, when you're trying to promote stuff, that maybe to my detriment, but I just couldn't get on Facebook, and now especially I want to. So
right, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so Alex Falconer is the handle for both Instagram and Twitter. That'd be the easiest way to kind of stay updated on what I'm doing. And just a note back on what you're saying about
Sure.
just how easy it is, like NRDC does to make things happen. I mean, that's what our petition is. But then my main job for the campaign is with government relations, and I talk to congressional offices like almost every day. And they reflect back that they oh my gosh, yeah, we've got like 30 emails from constituents on this, and it makes a difference. Like they do pay attention. The way it works is typically an email will come in, and yes, it's either an intern or a beginning level staffer that reads it, but they kind of make a chart of like, these are all the things that are bubbling up this week. And when you get upwards of 20, 30 comments on or emails on one subject, that goes directly to that member of Congress, because it for every one person that writes in, there's probably like 10,000 that care about it that just don't take the time to do so. Is kind of their calculus. And so it does make a difference. And so I would just encourage everybody to not think that, you know, so-called collectivism isn't without merit. It does matter.
Yeah. All those little steps. It's because a lot of times people think, well, I have to volunteer my time. I have to, I don't know, travel to the boundary waters and stand outside with picketing signs and whatever. But you don't have to go to that extreme to make a difference. It's as simple as sending a letter or an email, because I don't know how many people are still sending letters, but sending an email to a congressperson and saying, this is important to me. Finding organizations like yours and like the NRDC, the Conservation Alliance, any of them are all set up in a way to get your voice heard in a very simple and time, sensitive way that you can make a difference. And yeah. I'm definitely proud of you for what you did, man. That's a long journey across, and the vision that you had is inspiring. When I hear about people doing things like that, I don't know what you were doing prior to that, but you had this thing pop in your head that was a crazy idea, and that you followed it through to execution is incredible. And now it's getting this sort of traction where, here I am speaking to you. People are paying attention, and you're making a big difference. So I really appreciate it, man. It's inspiring.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I appreciate taking the time. I acknowledge you for everything that you've done so far. Good luck with the rest of this campaign. I will definitely be paying attention, and I hope my audience members are as well, to waiting and seeing if everything goes through. And hopefully Congress is smart enough to make it a permanent stay that we can all go for generations up to the boundary waters, experience nature at its purest form, and just get out there and enjoy it. So Alex, really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining me here at The Art of Actual Change. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Alex is an incredible human, as you saw today. I hope that his message was driven deep into your soul, that gets you to want to go out there and support him. It's going to take a lot for these public places, these beautiful protected lands, to not only become protected, but remain protected. It just takes one administration, a certain personality to devalue these places, and we need to do our part and to help protect them, so that not only ourselves but future generations can go out there and enjoy these wonderful places. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a like in the comments. Also, please share this across different social media platforms. Share this on YouTube, put it out on Instagram, Facebook, all those places that you like to share content. Tell us what you love about the show. Tell Alex what you love about his work. And everyone, you know what time it is. Go out there and make an actual change in your world or the world around you.